Last night, she set the table for two, out of habit. Then she froze, because there was no one coming home. That ache in your chest? It's not just loneliness. It's your heart, remembering what it feels like to belong, and longing to feel it again. Love after 50 can be the sweetest chapter yet, but it can also hide risks few people warn you about. Pause with me for just a moment, because what I'm about to share could save your heart and maybe even your future. Because as beautiful as love can be the second time around, sometimes it hides dangers we don't see coming. When it goes wrong, it doesn't just bruise your heart. It can leave deeper scars, ones that ripple through your finances, your confidence, even your trust in yourself. And yet, none of that means you should stop believing in love. It just means you deserve to walk into it with your eyes wide open and your heart fully protected. In this video, I'm going to share a real story, one that still haunts me, about someone close to me who was blindsided by love in all the wrong ways. I'll also show you the quiet, often invisible patterns that can lead even the smartest, most loving people into risky relationships. You see, whether divorced, widowed, or single, what you seek now is someone who truly sees you, someone to walk beside you, not complete you. But to find that kind of connection, you have to stay emotionally awake, and that starts with knowing what to look for and what to look out for. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that tug in your chest? The one that whispers, "I just miss having someone there." If you have, you're not alone. So many of us carry that quiet ache, sometimes for years, without ever saying a word. But here's the beautiful thing, just recognizing it is the first step toward healing it. Maybe it's the silence at dinner when you set the table for one, or the quiet realization that your partner's favorite snack is no longer there. That ache in your chest, it's the longing for connection, for home. And here's the hard truth that few people talk about. Loneliness can be one of the most dangerous emotional states. In that rawness, we yearn for comfort and familiarity, sometimes from the wrong places. Some people can sense that vulnerability like a beacon. Seemingly charming companions can turn into liabilities, emotional and financial, not because you're weak, but because your desire for closeness momentarily overpowered your better judgment. Here's what I want you to remember. You are worthy of love, but not at the cost of your peace. You deserve closeness, but not confusion. And most of all, you can open your heart without losing your mind. If this is already speaking to you, drop a heart in the comments or share. Have you ever felt that ache in your chest? How did you cope with it? I read every comment, and you never know who your story might help. Now, let me bring you even closer into why this matters so much, through the true story of someone whose journey touched my heart deeply. Real story, Linda's second chance turned nightmare. In her early 60s, Linda had lost her husband of 35 years to cancer. After 2 years of grieving, she was ready to move on. Then she met Rick at a local community garden. Rick was attentive, kind, and made Linda feel safe. He never asked for anything, and his quiet demeanor made her believe she could trust him. They dated for 9 months. Her friends raised quiet eyebrows, but Linda was glowing. She found joy again, laughing more, cooking more. Then Rick proposed. Within 6 months of the wedding, the tone shifted. Rick quit his job, said he was tired, said he wanted to focus on enjoying life. He began making casual suggestions about the house, about finances. Then it turned into access to her accounts, then joint purchases. Linda started feeling uneasy, but she didn't want to seem unloving. She told herself, "This is what partnership looks like now. We take care of each other." Until the day she found him snooping through her financial documents. That's when she finally asked for a divorce. And then came the final blow. Because Rick was now medically compromised and had no income, Linda, who had worked, saved and built a stable retirement, was ordered to pay spousal support. Yes, the very man who targeted her kindness is now legally entitled to her money. This happens more often than you think. If you or someone you know has seen red flags like this, drop a number 1 in the comments. Let's help each other stay aware, supported and strong. Stick around. We're going to talk about why this happens and how to protect yourself without closing your heart. It's painful to hear stories like Linda's, but it's also empowering, because when we understand how this happens, we can protect not just our hearts, but our futures. Let's take a closer look at the hidden reasons why even the most loving souls can find themselves caught off guard. Desire, why this happens to smart, caring people. You might be thinking, how could someone like Linda fall for that? Or even, that would never happen to me. And I get it. It's easy to believe we'd see the red flags, that we'd recognize manipulation, that we'd know better. But let's pause there for a moment, because the truth is, this happens to some of the smartest, most emotionally aware, most compassionate people out there. Why? Because when you lead with empathy, you tend to assume the best in others. And when you've experienced deep loss or long-term loneliness, that part of you, the part that wants to believe, gets louder than the part that questions. This isn't about ignorance. It's about emotional programming. After Linda's painful experience, it's easy to wonder how someone so wise and kind could find herself so vulnerable. What happened to Linda wasn't about being naive. It was about something deeper, something rooted in the way our hearts and nervous systems are wired for connection. Let's unpack what's really happening below the surface. Emotional imprinting. After decades with someone, your nervous system becomes wired for closeness. It remembers what it feels like to share a bed, to cook for two, to be held. When that disappears, it creates a kind of emotional phantom limb. You feel something missing even if you can't name it. So when someone new steps in with familiar energy, attentiveness, affection, routine, it feels like coming home, even if it's not safe. Familiarity bias. We all tend to trust what feels familiar. But familiar doesn't always mean healthy. If you've spent years being the giver, the fixer, or the emotional anchor in a relationship, you may unconsciously recreate that role. And some people will take full advantage of it. The time is running out urge. There's a quiet pressure that creeps in after 50. What if this is my last chance? That fear can make even the most grounded person ignore inconsistencies, brush off warning signs, or rush a relationship that should have unfolded slowly. But here's the truth. Love is not a countdown. You are not too old. You are not too late. You don't have to settle just because someone shows up and seems nice. The right person won't make you doubt yourself. They won't rush your timeline. They won't need rescuing. They'll meet you eye to eye, with their feet firmly on the ground and their heart already doing its own work. If this section resonated, share a moment when your heart overrode your instincts. You're not alone, and your story might help someone else. Knowing this doesn't mean closing your heart. It means honoring it with wisdom and care. And it leads to the next beautiful truth. You absolutely can love again, with both openness and strength. Here's how to walk that path with confidence. How to protect your heart and your future. Let's shift from fear to something far more powerful, awareness. Because here's the truth. You can absolutely find love again after 50, deep, respectful, soul-filling love. But you need to approach it with the wisdom you've earned, and with your eyes wide open. Protecting yourself doesn't mean shutting down your heart. It means building a foundation that supports both your emotional and practical well-being. Let's talk about how. Here are 5 grounded, loving strategies to help you stay safe without becoming cynical. First, let's talk about pace, because real connection doesn't rush. Go slower than feels comfortable. If the connection feels magical right away, it's tempting to dive in head first. But healthy love unfolds. It doesn't explode. Slow things down intentionally. Take space between dates. Sleep on big decisions. The right person won't be in a rush, and neither should you. As you're moving thoughtfully through a new relationship, it's just as important to keep your foundation steady, especially when it comes to finances. Protect your assets until there's legal clarity. No co-signing, no shared bank accounts, no joint property. Keep your finances separate until there's a legal written agreement, especially if marriage is on the table. Love is emotional, but security is structural. At the same time, stay curious. Words are beautiful, but actions, they're the true language of someone's heart. Watch for patterns, not promises. Early on, people are on their best behavior. Don't judge by words. Watch for consistency over time. Do their actions match their values? Are they kind when they don't get their way? Do they respect your time, space, and independence? Still, even with clear eyes, emotions can sometimes blur things. That's why leaning on the wisdom of trusted people around you matters so much. Keep a trusted circle in the loop. Talk to a friend, sibling, or adult child about your dating experience. Outside eyes can spot red flags you might miss when you're emotionally invested. If your inner circle expresses concern, take it seriously, not personally. And throughout it all, remember, no voice is wiser than the one inside you. Check in with yourself. Often ask yourself regularly, am I making this decision from love or from loneliness? Keep a journal if it helps. Tune in to your gut. Real safety comes from emotional attunement. These aren't rules, they're tools. Think of them as emotional seatbelts. You may never need them, but if you do, they could save you from a long, painful detour. You've worked hard to build your life. You deserve to share it with someone who honors what you've created, not someone who tries to control it. Take your time, trust your intuition, and never forget, you're not just looking for someone to spend time with, you're looking for someone who respects how far you've come. And once you start honoring your heart this way, something incredible begins to happen. You create space for the kind of love that feels steady, kind, and real. Let's take a breath together and step into that possibility. Because when you lead with wisdom, not fear, with tenderness, not urgency, you don't just protect yourself, you invite something better into your life. You invite a different kind of love, a love that doesn't rush, a love that doesn't ask you to shrink or to save it, a love that honors the life you've already built and chooses to walk beside you. And that kind of love, it's worth every bit of patience, every deep breath, and every ounce of faith it takes to wait for it. Let's take a moment to imagine what that could look like for you. The beauty of wise, late in life love. Now let's take a breath together, because this conversation isn't just about protecting yourself from what could go wrong. It's also about opening yourself to what can go right. Love after 50 has a beauty all its own. It's calmer, more grounded, less about fireworks, more about warmth. And when it's done right, it can be even more powerful than the love you experienced in your 20s or 30s. Here's why. At this stage of life, you're not trying to build a future from scratch. You've already created a life. You've survived heartache. You've raised families, chased careers, and faced real loss. And with that experience comes something priceless: clarity. You know what matters. You know what doesn't. You don't have time for games, and you don't need to be rescued. What you want now is connection, peace, emotional intimacy. Let me introduce you to Mark and Lisa. Both were divorced. Mark was 62, a retired school principal. Lisa was 58, a former nurse. They met at a cooking class, both hesitant, both a little bruised from past relationships. But they didn't rush. They texted for weeks before meeting for coffee. They talked openly about boundaries, finances, family. They each kept their homes and bank accounts separate. No pressure, no "what are we" talks, just steady companionship. And after a year, something beautiful unfolded. They still had their independence, but they also had someone to slow dance in the kitchen with. That's the magic of late-in-life love. It's not about needing someone, it's about choosing someone who respects your solitude but still wants to sit beside you in it, someone who doesn't complete your life but makes it sweeter. So if your heart still believes in love, but your mind has doubts, you're exactly where you need to be, because the best love isn't always the first. Sometimes it's the one that finds you after you've come home to yourself. Leave a comment if you've experienced a love like this, or if you're holding space for it, because you're never too old to be seen, chosen, and cherished. Stories like Mark and Lisa's are living proof. It's never too late for real, soulful connection. And if your heart is quietly hoping for a love like that, let's talk about the beautiful first steps you can take today. Because finding the right connection starts with small, meaningful actions you can take right now, ones that set the stage for everything to come. What you can do next. If your heart is nodding along right now, it's not by accident. You were meant to hear this message. Maybe it's confirmation of something your intuition has been whispering, or maybe it's a gentle wake-up call you didn't know you needed. Either way, you don't have to figure this all out alone. Here's where you can begin, with 3 simple but powerful steps that can help protect your heart and honor your future. First, start by reaching out in a small but meaningful way. Drop a comment below. If this message resonated, share a little piece of your story, or just type, "I'm listening." Sometimes the first step to healing or awareness is simply being seen. You never know who your words might help. And once you've found your voice, think about who else might need a little extra hope today. Send this video to someone who needs it. Maybe it's a friend who's re-entering the dating world, a parent, a sibling, or even your younger self if you could go back in time. Forward it with love, not fear. You might be the reason someone avoids heartache. Finally, keep this feeling of connection alive by staying close to a community that understands. Subscribe and stay connected. This isn't just a channel, it's a community. And if you're looking for honest, compassionate, real-world conversations about love, aging, healing, and connection, you've found your space. Because you deserve a second act that's wise, warm, and deeply, deeply fulfilling. By protecting your heart with wisdom, you don't just avoid heartache, you create the space for a love that's healthier, happier, and truly worthy of everything you've become. You're not behind. You're just beginning again, with clarity, strength, and a heart ready to love. Take care of that heart of yours. It's still beating for a reason. And if this touched your heart today, please share your story below or share this video with someone who needs it. Let's keep the circle of hope growing.